Welcome to Histoire et Mystere. Today, we take you back in time to uncover a fascinating story, the Invisible Courier. Stay with us till the end. The winter of 1793 had descended upon the port city like a heavy grey curtain. Snow fell in relentless sheets, turning the cobblestone streets slick and treacherous. And the wind howled along the quays with the chill of a dozen forgotten graves. Amid the chaos of revolution sweeping across France, a man appeared from nowhere. His face hidden beneath the brim of a dark felt hat, his coat heavy with frost. He carried with him not weapons or gold, but papers, letters, maps, and coded messages that would, unbeknownst to anyone, alter the course of nations for decades to come. His name, or what he called himself, was Étienne Vallois, though even that may have been an invention. The journals he kept, if they could be believed, told of journeys that spanned continents, from the bustling merchant ports of Lisbon to the icy fjords of Norway, from the tobacco warehouses of Virginia to the hidden printing presses of Vienna. Everywhere he traveled, he carried intelligence not for glory but for survival. He wrote of kings and generals who never suspected that a single courier could manipulate entire campaigns, steer fleets, or even influence treaties with the stroke of a pen. It was in Paris that Vallois first made the acquaintance of someone who would become his unlikely companion, a young American diplomat named Samuel Thornton. Thornton had arrived in France under the guise of negotiating trade agreements, but was, in truth, a spy for a fledgling nation whose independence depended upon knowledge and timing. Between the two men, a partnership emerged, a quiet, almost invisible alliance that would thread its way through some of the most pivotal moments in European and American history. In the months that followed, Vallois navigated the dangerous streets of Paris during the Reign of Terror. He observed, recorded, and transmitted information that would allow American agents to anticipate the movements of French and British forces alike. At the same time, he delivered cryptic messages to revolutionary generals, influencing the placement of troops and supplies. Some historians would later claim that the victory at Valmy and the success of early French campaigns were due not merely to ideology or strategy, but to information that traveled on the back of a man nobody would remember. By 1795, Étienne Vallois had begun crossing the Atlantic, carrying documents that detailed the shifting allegiances of European monarchs, secret negotiations between empires, and even hints of a looming confrontation that would later erupt as the Napoleonic Wars. In Philadelphia, he met with Thomas Jefferson, then Secretary of State, sharing details of French internal politics and warning of the fragility of European coalitions. Jefferson, impressed yet cautious, recorded Vallois's observations in letters that would remain hidden in the National Archives for centuries, their significance only recently unearthed by modern scholars. Vallois traveled with meticulous care, often passing as a merchant, a professor, or a minor diplomat. He spoke multiple languages, could mimic regional accents with eerie precision, and possessed an uncanny ability to read human intentions. In the year 1798, during the quasi-war between France and the United States, Vallois intercepted communications that allowed American naval forces to anticipate French privateer movements in the Caribbean, without anyone knowing. His intelligence saved hundreds of lives and prevented a confrontation that might have altered the outcome of early American maritime history. Yet Vallois's story is not merely one of espionage. He encountered individuals whose fates intertwined with his own in ways that history would rarely record. In the Austrian Alps, he aided a noblewoman fleeing the chaos of the French revolutionary advance. In the forests of Prussia, he assisted a disillusioned general in hiding documents that, if discovered, would have ignited scandal and war. In Lisbon, he thwarted a plot to destabilize trade between Spain and Britain, relying on nothing more than wit, observation, and an unerring sense of timing. By the dawn of the 19th century, Vallois had become something of a phantom legend in intelligence circles. French spies whispered of the shadow with no name. British diplomats referred to him in private correspondences as the Invisible Hand, and American agents simply noted his movements with a mixture of admiration and frustration. He arrives, he disappears, and all things seem to bend as he wills. As Napoleon rose from the ashes of the Revolution, Vallois found himself traveling across Europe with a growing network of contacts. He moved between Vienna, Milan, and London, carrying messages that could delay campaigns, mislead generals, or create opportunities for negotiation that the maps and plans of kings and ministers failed to foresee. His influence was subtle, often invisible, yet undeniably critical. When the Battle of Austerlitz approached in 1805, Vallois was already at work. Disguised as a trader of silks and spices, he moved along the Danube, delivering intelligence that, according to letters found decades later, allowed the coalition forces to adjust troop placements and anticipate French maneuvers. Scholars today debate how much impact Vallois actually had, but the consistency and precision of his records suggest that he was more than an observer. He was an architect of events, quietly shaping the world's history from the shadows. By 1807, his travels had taken him to Spain, where the Peninsular War was brewing. Disguised as a bookseller, Vallois delivered encrypted orders to both insurgents and sympathetic military officers. In Cadiz, he met a young British officer, Richard Montague, who would become an essential ally in transmitting intelligence across the Iberian Peninsula. Together, Vallois and Montague created a clandestine network of couriers, secret drop points, and coded messages that enabled the British to support Spanish guerrillas with unparalleled efficiency. The French, despite their formidable presence, found themselves constantly anticipating moves that seemed to come from nowhere. Vallois had become an invisible hand in a war that would shape European history for decades. His actions ensured that vital information reached the right hands at the right moment, subtly altering the course of battles, negotiations, and alliances, yet leaving no trace of his presence in the official records. By 1812, the story of Vallois grew ever more entwined with the fate of Europe. Napoleon, emboldened after years of conquest, prepared for his invasion of Russia. Vallois, aware of the logistical disasters awaiting the French army, orchestrated intelligence networks stretching from Warsaw to St. Petersburg. Letters intercepted by Vallois allowed the Russians to anticipate supply routes, winter provisions, and troop movements. It was subtle intervention, almost invisible, but critical in the eventual catastrophe that would unravel Napoleon's Grand Army. During the winter of 1812 to 1813, Vallois traversed frozen rivers and snowbound forests, carrying dispatches between Russian generals and Austrian allies. He navigated ambushes, spies, and storms alike, always maintaining his anonymity. Even the coalition commanders often credited luck or fortune for timely reinforcements, unaware that a single courier had orchestrated the information that saved thousands of lives. In the fall of 1813, as the forces gathered for the Battle of Leipzig, the largest battle in Europe prior to the First World War, Vallois's role became critical. Posing as a minor trader, he moved across Saxony, delivering intelligence that prevented ambushes, coordinated coalition strategies, and ensured that key information reached multiple Allied generals simultaneously. He was everywhere yet nowhere. A shadow whose presence would never appear in official chronicles, yet whose impact would resonate in history books for centuries. After the Battle of Leipzig, Vallois continued his work across Europe, mediating secret communications between Britain, Austria, Prussia, and the United States. He reported on industrial innovations, political conspiracies, and the slow transformation of Europe after the Napoleonic Wars. In Vienna, he witnessed the Congress of 1815, recording hidden agreements and subtle negotiations that shaped the modern map of Europe. His journals detailed not just armies and battles, but the economic, social, and diplomatic threads that bound nations together. In the Americas, Vallois's intelligence was equally profound. He traveled to New Orleans and the Caribbean, ensuring that American and European interests were balanced in a time of rapid expansion and trade. Letters in secret codes allowed young diplomats to anticipate European movements, secure trade rights, and prevent conflicts from erupting into war. Though he rarely lingered in one place, the influence of his unseen hand was unmistakable. By 1820, Vallois had grown older but no less cautious. He had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, revolutions, and the birth of new nations. His journals, though hidden in private collections and secret archives, formed an intricate web of knowledge about the early 19th century world. He remained, as always, the invisible courier, the man who moved behind the scenes, shaping events without ever appearing in history books. Vallois eventually retired to a quiet estate in the French countryside, where he catalogued decades of intelligence, correspondence, and first-hand accounts. Few visitors were allowed, and most who came never suspected the magnitude of his life's work. He had altered the course of battles, influenced diplomatic negotiations, and safeguarded the lives of countless individuals, all without recognition. In the late summer of 1832, Étienne Vallois passed away quietly in his sleep. No obituary noted his name, no public record commemorated his deeds. Yet the world he left behind bore the imprint of his invisible hand. From the streets of Paris to the halls of Congress in Washington, from the snows of Russia to the ports of the Caribbean, scholars and historians would uncover fragments of his life centuries later, piecing together the story of a man who had been everywhere and nowhere at once, the ultimate unseen architect of history. And so, the Invisible Courier became legend. Not for the glory of recognition, but for the subtle, enduring impact of a life lived in shadows, where a single individual could quietly alter the destiny of nations.